Hi, this is Robbie Bobby, grateful member of ACA. And on this video, I'd like to talk about the Cardinal Rule of ACA. It's also, you can call it the number one rule, but what makes it cardinal is the distance between rule number one and rule number two. And rule number two doesn't even come close. Cardinal means of utmost importance, foundational. Every 12-step fellowship has its own cardinal rule. Let's first have a look at ACA's parents, AA and Al-Anon. What is the cardinal rule of AA? Well, that's simple. Don't drink today. In that program, they say if you didn't drink today, you had a good day. You can imagine a scene where one AA is complaining about all the problems he faced that day. Then the other guy asks, "Did you pick up a drink today?" "No." "Well, then you had a good day." And I think that's great because the message is that despite bad things happening, you didn't pick up a drink. And that message reinforces the cardinal rule of AA, don't drink today. Now let's move over to Al-Anon. What's the cardinal rule of Al-Anon? Simple, mind your business. In other words, keep the focus on yourself. In Al-Anon, if you kept the focus on yourself today, you had a good day. Now I know that AAs also strive to keep the focus on themselves, to keep their side of the street clean, as it were, but it's not the cardinal rule. Which means if an AA picks up a drink, yet manages to keep the focus on himself, he still has a bad day, even though he minded his own business. Can you imagine an AA calling his sponsor and admitting he stopped at a bar after work to have a few drinks, and he's feeling all depressed and angry because he lost his sobriety date? Then the sponsor asks, "Did you focus on anyone else today?" "No, I didn't." "Oh, well then it's okay, you had a good day." No, you would never hear that. Likewise, an Al-Anon can have a drink, but as long as he minds his own business, he has a good day. The point of this is to stress the importance of each fellowship's cardinal rule. Why? Because there are many things that are competing for our attention. I hate to use the word distractions because it has a negative connotation, but each program has 12 steps, 12 traditions, 12 concepts, right? That's 36 things right there. There are dozens of slogans, suggestions, prayers, and promises. And we want to pay attention to these things. They're all there to help us. But do not lose track of the cardinal rule. The purpose of everything else is to help you abide by the cardinal rule. So, what is the cardinal rule of ACA? Practice self-love. Love yourself. I do believe that AAs also strive to love themselves, but it's not their cardinal rule. I believe that Al-Anon strive to love themselves, but it's not their cardinal rule. For an ACA, the number one rule is to practice self-love. Why? Because unlike other programs which rely on a higher power to remove character defects, including the obsession with alcohol, ACAs have emotional wounds that must be healed, not removed. And the only thing that can heal these childhood wounds is love. Love is the only medicine that can heal emotional wounds. This is of utmost importance, and everything else is secondary to that. So if you're an ACA and you practice self-love today, you had a good day. And if you didn't practice self-love today, well, then all bets are off. Okay, so now let's shift over to the steps. And this is where things get a little interesting. In AA, the cardinal rule is not to drink, but it's not mentioned in the steps. In Al-Anon, the cardinal rule of keeping the focus on yourself is also not mentioned in the steps. In ACA, the cardinal rule of practicing self-love is not mentioned in the official steps. The official steps are the same as AA and Al-Anon, and every other 12-step program, except for a few minor changes. Luckily, ACA has an alternate set of steps, which are known as the Tony A steps. Tony A was the founder of ACA. He also wrote the 14 traits, and he understood that the traits pointed to emotional wounds that needed to be healed by love. The word love is mentioned 6 times in the Tony A steps, both in the context of receiving it from a higher power, as well as accepting our own unconditional love. The Tony A steps are brilliant. They are not ambiguous as to what the cardinal rule of ACA is. And the reason I think it's so important is because I believe that at their core, at an unconscious level, ACAs feel both unloved and unlovable. You could say unworthy of love, including self-love. And it's a catch-22 when you consider that one of the effects, perhaps the primary effect, of these emotional wounds, which can only be healed with love, is feeling or believing that you're unlovable. This is why for many ACAs, the wounds remain unhealed for decades, perhaps their entire lives. I think many ACAs are uncomfortable with the idea of loving themselves because they don't know how. They've had no practice. And if they could somehow recover from this disease without doing it, if it could be avoided, they would. And by the way, I'm speaking from my own experience. When I first came to ACA from Al-Anon, I considered self-love more of a suggestion. I now realize that in order to recover from the effects of growing up in an alcoholic and dysfunctional home, that self-love is not an option. It is an absolute requirement. I have finally made a decision to practice self-love. That's Tony A. Step 3. I'm going to wrap up with a suggestion. However you decide to work your ACA recovery program, and there are endless ways to do so, make the cardinal rule of self-love your North Star. Let it guide you. I'm Robbie Bobby. Thank you for listening, and keep coming back.